This morning, Texas reportedly inflating statistics along the border, adding arrests hundreds of miles away that have nothing to do with illegal immigration, drugs, or human smuggling. We'll get into this new reporting and the governor's reaction. President Biden admitting 100,000 Ukrainian refugees, a small fraction of those fleeing. We'll ask Democratic Congressman Marc Veasey whether the U.S. should be doing more. The F-35 fighter jet made in Fort Worth has had a troubled history, but the U.S. is now deploying it to Europe as a diplomatic tool. We'll look at the role it will play. And Senator Ted Cruz making lots of headlines, police stepping in when Cruz got frustrated after missing a flight in Montana, and what he said at the Supreme Court confirmation hearing that has people talking.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to our viewers across the state. I'm Jason Whiteley. We will begin this week with the top political headlines here in Texas. In Austin, a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers are asking for clemency or a reprieve for Melissa Lucio. She is from Lubbock, the only Latina on death row, and scheduled to be executed 1 month from today for killing her 2-year-old daughter. But Democratic and Republican lawmakers say there are too many questions in her case. It's now up to the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles to make a recommendation to the governor. Beto O'Rourke has responded to the lawsuit that he defamed oil billionaire Kelcy Warren. The Democratic nominee for governor denied he did anything wrong, but Beto did not ask for this case to be dismissed, as many might do in this situation. Instead, O'Rourke demanded a trial by jury, which could create publicity to help his campaign. And in Granbury, southwest of Fort Worth, a story that has gotten a lot of headlines lately. The superintendent of Granbury ISD said public school libraries are no place for books with LGBTQ or sexuality themes. The superintendent, Jeremy Glenn, said Granbury is, quote, very conservative, and he told librarians that if they have a different political belief, quote, you better hide it. This exclusive reporting at TexasTribune.org. Let's start with the war in Ukraine, underway for 1 full month now, and it is getting closer to Texas. Europe has already absorbed millions of Ukrainian refugees, and now President Biden says the U.S. will take in 100,000 of them. But that is a small fraction in this growing humanitarian crisis. It also led to our first question this morning for Congressman Marc Veasey, a Democrat who represents a wide swath of Fort Worth, Arlington, and Dallas. Congressman Veasey, welcome back to the program. The U.S. is going to accept 100,000 Ukrainian refugees, according to President Biden a couple of days ago. There are more than 3 million refugees coming out of that country right now. Is the U.S. doing enough to help them?
I certainly think that we can do more. I actually called on President Obama to double the number of Syrian refugees that he was going to allow in. We can certainly accommodate more. Refugees are very hardworking, grateful people, and can actually fill a lot of jobs in certain sectors like agriculture, that we need right now as they wait until this conflict ends, until they can get back into their own home countries. And so, let's start at 100,000, but let's look at doing more. We certainly can absorb a lot more than that, and I would support a higher number.
The other big news in D.C. right now, of course, is the confirmation hearing for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. And April 4th is when the Senate Judiciary Committee is going to vote on whether to send her nomination to the full Senate. It's 11 members on the Republican side, 11 members on the Democratic side. Given the current state of politics, though, as we all know, do you expect her nomination to advance?
I do expect her nomination to advance. I think that she's done a wonderful job. I really hate that it's become so divisive. I think that a lot of the questioning from Republicans are quite frankly, intentionally, racially driven. It was almost funny, but it was sad at the same time to listen to Marsha Blackburn, try and figure out a way how, she was going to fit CRT into a question that was completely irrelevant. To her being confirmed. It was like she just wanted to put CRT out there so she could, try and scare people. And it was sad, but at the same time, I actually started laughing because it was so silly. And I think it's unfortunate that it has gone that way, but I would have to commend Judge Brown Jackson. She's done a great job, and she's answered all the questions. And I really hope that it's not a step backwards. When you look at, for instance, First Step Act, and you see that many of the senators, including senators here in Texas, that were instrumental in helping us get First Step passed. You hope that we're not going back to that sort of 1980s. Oh, I'm going to show that I'm tougher on crime than you, and you don't want to, and you get into that sort of silliness, cartoonishness of trying to be that person instead of like working towards programs that can actually help improve society and our criminal justice system.
If her nomination gets to the full Senate, of course, Democrats need every single vote they have in the Senate to get her passed. Will she pass in the Senate? There have been several Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, who have strayed from the Democratic Party. Do you expect that she will be confirmed?
I think that she's going to be confirmed. I know both of those senators very well, and I think that on this, that they are going to be there. They understand the importance and the historic significance of this nomination. And also they understand that this is an extremely qualified person that has been the most popular nominee that has testified since, I believe, Justice Roberts. And so I absolutely do think that they're not going to have any issues at all with her. I would be very surprised if they did. And I expect the nomination to go right through.
Congressman, last question here too. We saw the news about jobless claims being at a 50-year low, but of course, inflation and gas prices are incredibly high right now. How concerned are you that both of those will be detrimental to Democrats come November?
I think that people understand that what's happening in Europe is going to have an effect on gasoline prices, that we've seen prices go up, but we also believe in democracy. And we believe at any cost that we have to stop Putin from engulfing parts of Europe into. But
how about inflation, though? I mean, because gas prices might make a little sense, but inflation is really high right now. It's something the Fed is trying to address, and it will still be around come November.
And again, that's an area that of course is a concern for all of us. But again, when you look at the low joblessness rate, when you look at the fact that people are making more money than they ever have before, we also have a lot to celebrate. But, a lot of people in the media are really just focusing on the more negative aspects of that. But when you look at the low unemployment rate, we have like record low unemployment rate for Black and Latino Americans. I mean, it's really things are a lot better than they have been in a long, long time. We just need to make sure that we do take this issue of inflation serious, and we are trying to combat it the best that we can.
Congressman, thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Let's continue now with the war in Ukraine just for a moment, and an indirect role Texas is playing. The F-35 fighter jet there, built in Fort Worth, it has had a storied history, as has been reported, but the F-35 is the latest and greatest fighter jet on the planet. And President Biden is deploying it right now to Europe, but not to fight. This is a story that Abby Livingston is working on. She is the Washington bureau chief for the Texas Tribune. Abby, good to see you. This is an interesting piece that's coming out sometime in the next few days. You were mentioning the F-35 is being used as a diplomatic tool, not a military one. Explain this.
Correct. It is almost unfathomable that we will see a Ukrainian pilot fly an F-35, just both out of American policy and caution, and also because it's such a technologically advanced aircraft. But just prior to the Russian invasion, the American military began deploying F-35s to Europe. And that was a signal to Russia, hey, we're taking this seriously. And on top of that, it just demonstrates American military superiority that I think when they first deployed it, we would have never, the layman, realized just how behind the Russian military was. So it's a deterrence, but also other countries who are approved by the American government can buy F-35s. And we saw Germany uptick their purchase of it, which is extraordinary because Germany is usually fairly reluctant to embrace military power. And so because the plane is so complex, you not just selling it to other countries, but keeping them in our fold for maintenance is going to be an ongoing diplomatic tool within NATO and other American allies.
About 15 seconds left here. Abby, I do want to ask you whether Democrats have the votes to make Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to confirm her in the Senate next month.
It looks like they do. And this is a liberal replacing a liberal.
Yeah.
So it's very unlikely she will run into trouble unless something we don't see coming happens.
All right, Abby, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Coming up next, the former elections administrator for Harris County, Chris Holland, says the real impacts of the Republican-passed voting laws, they will be noticeable in November. He's with us when we come back. You're watching Inside Texas Politics. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. You know, Texas rejected more than 27,000 mail-in ballots this month. No place had more issues during the primary than Houston. And the former elections administrator there is Chris Holland. He says the most significant parts of the new Republican-passed voter laws, they will not be noticeable until November. Hey, Chris, welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. You're running for mayor of Houston next year, but let's talk about your former employer for a moment, Harris County. This month, it had broken machines. It was late in reporting vote totals. There were 10,000 votes that didn't get added to the final count for quite some time there. You've led that office. There's shakeup in the office now. What would you suggest that needs to be done to right the ship there?
Yeah, well, hey, Jason, first of all, thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure to join you on the show. Look, I'm passionate about voting rights. I'm passionate about voter access. And so I would be certainly willing to offer any advice I would have. But I know that they are planning to bring in some consultants to solve some of the operational challenges that are being faced and to make sure that there's adequate resources in the department. And also, very importantly, that voters are being educated about the changes in the new law that have made voting a little bit more challenging and how to make sure that you can get to the polls and express your voice through the ballot box this fall.
Well, let me ask you about that. Thousands of these rejected ballots were Republicans. Do you expect the Republican-led legislature will actually tweak this law next January when they reconvene?
I doubt it. I mean, we had an electrical grid that got shut down during a winter storm, and next to nothing was done to solve that very important problem where hundreds died. And so I don't have a lot of confidence in our legislature to step up and solve these issues, but they absolutely should. Again, we have our parents and grandmothers and friends and family who vote this way because it's a safe way to vote. It's a convenient way to vote. And frankly, our entire state should have access to be able to vote that way. But because of partisan politics, now all of a sudden, mail voting is the new boogeyman that Republicans are using to instill fear in voters and in their constituents. And so our seniors and folks with disabilities are the victims of that. That should not be the case, but it is, unfortunately.
Before we let you go, what are you expecting in November, considering what we saw happen this month in the primary?
Yeah, well, frankly, some of the parts of the voter suppression bill have not yet reared their ugly head, and they will in November. A very important part of that is the partisan poll watchers that are empowered to come into voting centers and frankly, intimidate voters without any accountability or many ways to keep them from doing so. And so I expect that to be a real problem that we're seeing in communities of color this fall. And, my hope is that not only will elections officials be prepared for that and take appropriate action, but also our law enforcement officials will be partners in making sure that constitutional rights are not being violated here in our November elections in Texas.
Chris, we will be watching. It's always good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Have a good one, Jason. See you soon.
Thousands of Ukrainian refugees are expected to come to Texas in the coming weeks. Dallas alone anticipating about 3,000 of them. But the longer this war drags on, it begs the question, how long will the world welcome them? Is all this goodwill sustainable? There's a Texas nurse named Sarah Phillips in Moldova on the border with Ukraine, and we posed that question to her in the latest episode of Y'all-itics.
At the moment, you have people who are literally volunteering at a shelter every single day after their workday.
So these are Moldovan citizens who go to work all day and then go to a shelter and help out?
Yeah, exactly. Every day. Wow. And we know that's not sustainable. So I I don't get any sense that there will be a loss of compassion, but there may be a loss of energy to keep giving at the same rate and pace.
Texans are watching this from thousands of miles away, watching on television, seeing it scrolling through our social media feeds. What do you think that Texans don't get about this crisis?
I have heard some Texans say, oh, this is different. They look just like me. And honestly, that really bothers me a lot, because the color of someone's skin shouldn't dictate how we treat them. But the reality is it kind of has in our history. We have a lot of refugees in Dallas, in Texas. Dallas is one of the major refugee resettlement cities in the US. There's an enormous opportunity to extend the same generosity that Moldovans are doing to refugees in Dallas right now. Maybe you don't have to let them sleep in your guest room, although perhaps we should all consider it, but you can invest in the lives of people who look different and have a different background than you. And that, I don't know, I just feel like we all have this part to play. And if we don't carry our little load of the burden of the world, then someone else is carrying a double load.
Sarah Phillips is one of 2 episodes of Y'all-itics we dropped over the last few days. She is in Moldova, but we spoke with another young woman, a 24-year-old American photojournalist who is in Kyiv. Life there, she said, is not what you would expect. Both share compelling stories. Y'all-itics available to download this morning wherever you get your podcasts. In just a moment on this program here, reporters from the Texas Tribune uncovered something troubling. Texas reportedly inflating statistics along the border. Plus, Ted Cruz making lots of headlines last week. We'll discuss them both next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Abby Livingston is back with us from Washington, D.C., the bureau chief for the Texas Tribune there. Bud Kennedy is here every week from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And Ian Mitra back with us this week, also from the Texas Tribune. Ian, good to see you. Let's start with you, actually, Ian, and Operation Lone Star, which is the state's border security effort. The Trib and ProPublica have this fascinating story over the last few days showing that the state has been inflating its arrest numbers. Arresting people far north of the border that don't have anything to do with any border-type crimes. What is the governor saying about this now?
Yeah, so this week in partnership with ProPublica and the Marshall Project, we kind of reported that the metrics have been shifting, and the governor has continued to tout this success of Operation Lone Star, saying that it's breaking up human smuggling drug networks and is really being efficient. The challenge, of course, is like finding the data to support this, and the data that our organizations have gotten from DPS has shifted. Some arrests that were originally counted in the totals of arrests being touted have been taken off because they aren't necessarily relevant, and so that's kind of the big question: is like, how successful is it? It's hard to tell from the metrics.
And Bud, Texas taxpayers have been throwing billions of dollars to the border over the past 4, 5, 6, 7 years, perhaps longer than that. Accountability has always been an issue on this.
Everybody's wondered what the results are, and then the numbers you don't see are the crimes that take place or the traffic violations in the rest of the state, because so many DPS troopers are in the valley. Is there a golf team crash in Andrews if there's a trooper on that highway? Much of the state is left virtually completely unpatrolled because so many troopers are in the valley. How many more crimes have taken place?
Abby, this has been around for a while, and accountability has been an issue, but it's never been an issue during elections. Now, with this reporting out here, more questions being asked, is this something that lasts until November?
Possibly, but what I'm also interested in is 2024 down the road if Governor Abbott runs for president, because I think the border will be a cornerstone issue he will try to use, being, the governor of Texas. And so I think there will be many, many more investigations from news organizations like this should he run for president someday.
Bud, let's talk about Senator Ted Cruz for a moment. Abby, I'm going to come back to you about that because he's in D.C. right now. But Bud, Senator Cruz has had a busy last few days in the headlines from Montana to D.C., and none of it has been really that positive. Does this impact him on the next election or set him up if he's in Iowa running for president?
I will yield to Abby on this, but it's certainly been a big week of television for the senator. He was, I think, seen searching for his own name on Twitter during the confirmation hearing seemed to kind of be the star of that show. You had the confrontation of him at the airport trying to get on a plane that he'd missed. He seemed to be on virtually every day. He's his own reality show.
Abby, what are people saying in D.C.? Because you saw him in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings last week.
I have no doubt that some of the things he did in the hearings play well with the conservative base, but I have run into some Republicans who were very unhappy with that tone. That is not unusual with Republicans being unhappy with Ted Cruz, but this one felt a little different.
And when we talk about Ted Cruz, it seems nothing sticks to him. It was just a year ago that he went to Cancun to get away from the cold weather in February. Is this something that could have lasting impacts, especially if he's looking at Iowa to run for president in 24?
Well, certainly it could come up, but I think, to Abby and Bud's point too about, who the audience he's catering to and who's listening. I think, some of this is going to play pretty strong with a base in a continually polarizing political climate.
Yeah, and Bud, I guess at some point, if he decides to run, this would make for good attack ads against him, perhaps.
Well, this is a lot of coverage, a lot of attention. If there's no Trump, he certainly builds his name ID. But, to a lot of Texans, it just shows you why every time Texans have the chance, they send him out of the state for another 6 years.
All right. Well, for the record, we did invite Senator Cruz on our program this Sunday. We did not hear back from his office in Washington, D.C. I and Bud, Abby, thank you guys very much. We appreciate it as always. Thank you for watching, too. We're back again next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics and hope you can join us in. Until then, hope you have a great week.